We learned a hard lesson, Mr. President.
You cannot shame a state that has no shame. I go up to them and say, "Aap India se ho?" And they say, "Nahi, hum Pakistan se." Although a couple of rishta offers have come in, I hate to break it to them. I'm 21. My mother is not going to let that happen anytime soon. So, it was a bit of a nice moment for the two of us saying, "Baap baap hota hai, beta beta hota hai." So when Operation Sindoor first happened,
That's Viraansh Bhanushali. You might have seen him in this video.
I shall gladly admit
that sometimes it takes an Indian to clean up the incompetence of a Pakistani.
For context, the debate was held at Oxford Union with Indian and Pakistani speakers discussing India's security policy. On one side was Viraansh Bhanushali. On the other side of the floor was Musa Haraj, the Pakistani president of the union.
as his chief of staff, I've spent months working with him, which makes tonight a tad bit awkward. Because technically, I'm supposed to make him look good. But here I am, last night, writing his speech for him.
But did he really write that speech?
Essentially, when we do roasts, this is a common tradition at Oxford Union debates. So every speaker has to roast the speakers on the other side. So if you see Musa's speech, he did the same for me as well. I think it was funnier.
I can personally say I have lived through India's entire Pakistan policy because Viraansh is exactly like that. Loud, high on emotion.
Musa calls me and says, "Viraansh, is your speech ready?" I was like, "Well, not yet. I have to write it." And then he was like, "Okay, you have to write mine as well." I'm like, "Musa, I'm speaking against you. I can't write your speech." He's like, "Yeah, you're still my chief of staff, aren't you?" I was like, okay, I said, I can help you. So 6 hours before the event, me and Musa, we sat down. I looked through his notes and said, "Okay, this is what you can do better." I didn't want to comment on any substantive points because fundamentally we're a free speech society. Musa has a right to say what he said as much as I have to say what I said.
I stand here to expose the regime of Narendra Modi, a government that has turned the world's largest democracy into the world's largest stage for hate.
Sometimes you have a conversation with people and you tell them, "Okay, this is what I'm going to joke about." And when the whole writing the speech incident happened, I told him, "I'm going to make a joke about this and you better be ready."
But here I am, last night, writing his speech for him.
So what I didn't know was that he was going to ask his point of information. So I was on the spot there and my parents were there. And I was like, okay, if I cook this up, it's going to be a massive embarrassment.
Point of information.
Yes.
So you're admitting in a chamber that what I just said was written by an Indian, you.
To respond, I shall gladly admit that sometimes it takes an Indian to clean up the incompetence of a Pakistani.
He wanted some help when it came to rhetorical flourishes and just larger arguments. I think Musa and his dear friend, so I know him really well. When he first said the POI, I think he really thought he got me. He was like, "Oh, that he's not going to have something back for this." Because he had an inkling I was going to make a joke, right? I didn't know he was going to say this. So, it was a bit of a nice moment for the two of us saying, "Baap baap hota hai, beta beta hota hai."
His girlfriend breaks up with him. What does Viraansh do? Blame the Pakistani president. He gets punched in the face by a mobster. What does Viraansh do? Blame the Pakistani president. And if he loses his election tomorrow, I'm telling you, trust me, he will blame the Pakistani president.
What was really funny was the next day I had my election for vice president of the union. And I lost that election by like a very, very tiny margin. And I'm going to take this platform and say, "Musa, that's not your fault."
Online, the debate went viral, but the speakers were not rivals. They were friends who met over a shared language.
I was just eating a burrito and I saw these two people speaking in what I thought was Hindi. And, I'm generally a bit extroverted. So I go up to them and say, "Aap India se ho?" And they say, "Nahi, hum Pakistan se." So I was like, "Oh, kahan se Pakistan mein?" And then that's how we started talking initially. So when Operation Sindoor first happened, I was very vocal about it on my Instagram, etc. back then. And I actually lost a lot of friends. And a lot of Pakistani former friends of mine would come up to Musa and say, "How can you be friends with Viraansh, etc. And Musa said, "I cannot make a man argue against his country." And since then, of course, always I've had a lot of respect for him in that sense.
We asked him about the online reaction to his viral moment.
Although a couple of rishta offers have come in, I hate to break it to them, I'm 21. My mother is not going to let that happen anytime soon. That's been my one qualm with a lot of the comments I'm getting, which is like, how can you be friends with Musa? Right? And I mean, listen, I see it, right? Like it's a privilege for me to be friends with Musa because, I'm halfway across the world from India. I, don't have to personally feel the grief of a family member of the security forces, but, personnel who's had their life lost, it's But I think, and this is how I ended my speech as well, the vision I see for the subcontinent is not one of conflict. It's one of cooperation. And I think we can start that where we must. And it's a line I always say, which is Gandhiji may have asked to turn the other cheek, but he always kept a stick in his hand.
The same voice being celebrated online once stumbled in classrooms. Years ago, he was mocked for a stammer he's still learning to overcome.
Yeah, I grew up with a stammer. I'm not quite sure what the English word for it is, but I grew up totla, in the sense I couldn't say my T's and my D's properly. I was sort of made fun of for that in school, I guess.
He also shared how being pushed into debates helped him understand and manage it. Over time, confidence, technique, and practice helped him find his voice. Today, that voice is being heard far beyond Oxford.
Did the non-populist approach buy us peace? No. It bought us Pathankot. It bought us Uri. It bought us Pulwama.
And finally, while everyone online keeps arguing over the clip, we asked him the one question that actually matters. Who really won?
I think to understand who won that day, you have to also place the day into context, right? Which is that we first actually had a pretty star-studded lineup, both from the Indian side and the Pakistani side. We had Jai Deepak sir coming. We had interest from Subramaniam Swami sir. We had interest from Sachin Pilot sir. We had interest from Priyanka Chaudhary madam. So when we convey across from both sides, because both sides ask us, right, which are the other speakers coming? What happened was we were informed slightly earlier that there were some Indian speakers that could not make it because of health and work commitment reasons.
Viraansh also told us how an Indian delegation was put together at short notice only for the Pakistani side to object to its composition and eventually pull out entirely. He said the decision came as a shock, forcing him and his committee to break the news to the Indian speakers and issue personal apologies. In the end, the event went ahead without guest speakers, becoming a student-only debate.
So as a result of that, what happened was a lot of the Indians in Oxford felt very demoralized, especially, we had this massive media storm come out of nowhere, which I don't even know who leaked that information, to be very honest with you. And as a result of that, it almost like it was portrayed as if the Indian delegation backed out, which it never did. The Indian delegation was ready to come until the last minute. But unfortunately, circumstances worked out in the way that they did, and very few Indians showed up. So what that meant was when we counted, if you look at pictures of the chamber, there's a door on top of one side of the door, there's the eyes and the nose. So after the second the second speaker's speech, which would be mine, you walk out of the door. Given which side you walk on, we have two tellers on a side that count how many people have walked in and out. And as a result, I believe we lost that day. But I think given how our speeches have been received, especially in India and internationally, I would say that's a matter of the crowd that chose to show up and not the value of our arguments.
And that's the story behind Oxford's viral moment. Thanks for watching it on
More of everything.
More